Welcome to part 2 of our 3-part mini-series. In this part,
we're going to repair the pads.
In this video, the tools you're going to need will include an adjustable wrench, just like this.
A Phillips screwdriver.
Just like that. And in most cases, you're probably going to need replacements for these. The first one is an M4x12 screw, a washer, and I'd say most importantly, a spacer. I'll give you more details about those in the details section of my video. Alright, the very first thing we're going to check is making sure that our pads are leveled nicely and evenly. That's such an important thing because I found that over time shaky pads cause more vibration, and in over time it's going to cause some screws of the inner screws to fall off or become loose, or in even some cases maybe even tighten and cause some of the brackets to stick. Have a look down here at the player 1 pad. So to check, it's very simple. Go to a corner and step. If you find some vibration or shaking, it might not be level. So let's check on this one. Feels pretty nice. This one feels alright. Let's go to the last one. Oh, we found our problem over here. So let's take a look. If you can see, the leg on this one is not raised enough. It's causing some shaking. To fix this, all you're going to need is an adjustable wrench like this. Get it underneath, come over here, and just very simply, and probably you can use your hand until it gets really hard, and then just go ahead and raise that. What we're looking for is that later we're going to do the test again and make sure that it's even around. So let's take a look, see if we got it. That feels good. Might be okay. Not bad. And what I like to do is stand here and kind of do this. If there's any real difference, you'll feel it. And it looks like we're good. Alright, so for this next part, what we're going to do is we're going to show you how to use the inner screws correctly on the L bracket. This is an L bracket. L bracket has 3 holes for 3 screws. Really, you only need 2 of them, and the top 2 is what you really need. And we're going to put that down there, and I'm going to show you exactly what you need. First, you need this. This is a screw, size M4. I'll put a link in the description for more information. This is a washer. And lastly, and certainly not least, this is a spacer. I believe it's a 1/4 inch, but if I'm not correct, I'll definitely put the correct size in the description. So let's take a look. The setup should be like this. You got the screw. Put on the spacer. And what's really important is you got to make sure you have a washer that can go over the spacer. I'm not sure if you can see that well, but it should be something like that. It should have a washer that is wide enough to cover the spacer. Now the reason why it's doing that is because the spacer allows a gap so that this bracket can still be free lifting up and down. If you were not to use a spacer, this would just tighten all the way down and it would lock it. You don't want that. You need a spacer. The washer just kind of makes it a little, closer. It varies in size. So for instance, some of my screws, they actually have 2 washers, and some of them have, just only 1. Some of them have a thicker washer. It varies. But what you're looking for is to make something like this so that when you tighten it, you get an effect like this one. This one is good because if you look over here, you'll see that it's free moving and there's not a lot of well, the best way to say is the bracket is directly on top of the screw. It's not hanging off. And you can tighten this all the way down. and we tighten it all the way down, the chance that it gets lifted up is very small. So the spacer allows you to make it as tight as possible. If you didn't have a spacer, the washer would be hitting this and this would not be able to move. But also, if you didn't have a washer, this wouldn't be close enough and this would be hanging off too far and you wouldn't be hitting all of the sensor that you could be. So it's very important that you have these and at least 2 of them on every single L bracket. If you don't have this, you'll probably start running into problems either now, future, or soon. So this is probably the most common problems that I see. Either people don't have enough of these, they don't have them in the right spots, or they don't have just the right tools, and that's common. But either way, I'm going to put in the description where you can order some of these. Alright, so to put it on, after you have the setup correctly, screw, spacer, and washer, all you're going to do is put it in there and screw it in. As I said before, the reason why we have the spacer is because we can screw it in all the way down. So don't be afraid to get that in as tight as possible. Ideally, you really want this tight. You really do. The reason you want it tight is because you don't want this to ever come loose again. But of course, you got to make sure it's still free moving. If you screw it all the way down and this is not free to move, then your spacer is too small or your washer is too big and you're going to have to mix and match and find something better. So do it like this and you should be fine. Let's get the last one on and we should be good to go. Don't forget, we need it in the top 2. If you got a third one and you can put it there, that's an extra bonus, but it's really not necessary. And for my pads, I don't think I have any of them that have a third one. And I mean, if you got it, great, but if you don't, you'll be fine with 2. 1 is never a good idea. Alright, so just like this, screw it down, and make sure you're doing it correctly. Sometimes people will make a silly mistake where they'll have a space between the washer and then they'll screw it like this, so actually it'll hit the washer instead of the spacer. I'm not sure if you know what I'm talking about, but once in a while that'll happen. But I think luckily for me, my parts won't allow that to even happen. So there, again, you want to make sure that these are free moving. It's tightly on, but it's still free to move. If this isn't free to move, you're gonna have problems. And if this isn't pushed close enough and this is hanging off a good ways, you're also gonna have problems. This is what you're going for, and you want to get this for every single L bracket.
Okay, here's a common problem that I've just encountered. The first thing you're going to want to do is get an I/O check working. This is an X3, so they got a all switch or a separate switch. I prefer using the all switch because that gives you results in real time. As opposed, separate switch will tell you the individual workings of each one, but it's going to be some lag to it. So if you're just testing one sensor, you want to know how fast it's reacting. So let's take a look at this one right here. Now that's a problem. Some of you probably already know why, but if you don't know why it's really a problem, let me try to illustrate it with you like this. Let's take a good look at the player. Well, you'll see it. You'll see the little red one. I'm going to push on it really hard right now. Right now I'm pushing on it. Harder, 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 harder. Wow, finally I got it to read. Now, why was that so hard to get that to read? The answer is very, very simple actually. You see, if you're only using one of the screws, especially just the bottom screw, this thing hangs off a little, and you can see that like that. If it's hanging off, you're not hitting the complete sensor. Now, I'm going to hold it right there, and we're going to try the test again. Alright, I'm pushing, oh wow, look at that. I'm literally just tapping it with my thumb right now. Opposed to when I was like this, if I tap it with my thumb, I got nothing. I gotta put my whole hand on it until I get something. So to fix that, what we're gonna do, you gotta have a screw in this one and in this one.
Alright, now I want to talk a little bit about the sensors. Sensors are important, but probably not nearly as important as people might lead you to believe. Because actually, let's take a look. So if you didn't know, I hope you do, these are the sensors. You got 4 of them. A lot of people I know, they'll say, oh, my machine's bad, I need new sensors. I'll tell you this, that is really, really rarely the case. If you fix these the way I told you to fix them, probably it'll fix most of the problems. It's very rare that you'll have a bad sensor. I've dealt with many machines before, and I've rarely encountered a truly bad sensor. And when it is bad, it's usually a bad in the opposite way most people would say. It's probably bad because it's too sensitive and it'll hold down, and it's always tripping or triggering at the wrong times. That's the most common I find. But it is true that some sensors are more sensitive than others. So after you got these all squared away, what you're going to do is find out. So when you got an I/O check running on your DDR machine, or ITG, I guess this would apply for both, what you're going to do is check the sensitivity. To do that, what I like to do is just do a thumb test. Push down, see how hard you got to push until you get a response on the screen, and check for each one. And if you see one is a little more sensitive, let's do a hypothetical. Let's say that this one, and this is the inner one. Keep in mind that let's get a little panned out. We have the panels here. The inner one is always the most important. It really is. And then the second, well, the next two would be obviously the next two, but that would be here. But absolutely, positively, you want to make sure that your inner one is the best. So, for my hypothetical, let's pretend for my thumb test, this was the worst one, and the outside one was the best. What do? Simple. You're just going to change them. To do that is pretty simple, but some people have trouble with this. There is a little trick to it. This can be sometimes hard to get off, and the secret to getting this off is with your thumb on the smaller end. You're going to push in. You got to really push this part in. You got to push it in and then pull it out, and it should come out. And then for here, you can slide that out like that. So like I said, in my hypothetical, this is our best one, and we want our best one where? Inside. So let's go ahead, right here, again, push in, pull. Should come right out. And to put it in, what I like to do is I'll get just the head of it in like this, and I'll just push it in like that, slowly. And sometimes you'll have trouble, and if you do have trouble, I'll take my other finger and I'll lift up the head, just like that. If you can see it, I lift it up because it'll slide in easier, and when it's all the way in, then you can push it back down. Okay? And when it's like that, you can connect it. Let's do the same thing for the other one. We're going to push it in. This one's already having more trouble. So what I want to do is lift up the head on this side. And now it slides in a lot easier. And when it's all the way in, you can push it down. And I know right now in the middle it's not all the way in. I can just push down on the L bracket, and that should square it away. And then do your final adjustments on this side. Make sure it's good. And last and certainly not least, plug it in. If you really did run into a problem where you just had one sensor that was completely, killed, either because it was too sensitive or just it doesn't flat out work, what you're going to do, put it in your outside. Just put it in the outside and leave it unplugged. If this sensor was really giving you a problem, just put it there, unplug it, don't need it. You really don't need all four. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's great to have all four, but you'll function just fine with 3 of them. And just make sure that the one that's not working is in the outside. So if it was on the right arrow over here, you want to make sure that you put the dead one here. And if it was the down, you'd put the dead one here. If it's the left, well, I have a question. Do you play doubles? If you play doubles, you don't want to put it here. But if you don't play doubles, then yeah, you could just put the dead one there.
Now that we're done repairing the pads, click on this third mix poster for the next video.